Good morning and welcome to the latest Burr News interview. I'm joined by Wayne Furbert. Mr Furbert is going to talk to us about the same-sex marriage issue. Going to start off, Mr Furbert. Now, the amendment to the Human Rights Act that you've tabled, that's a private member's bill.
Yes, it is.
My understanding of private member's bill is that they're treated exactly the same as any other bill, but they're allocated less time. So are you confident that you will have the time in this session to introduce the amendments and have them debated?
Be clear what you mean by last time. We have the same time.
Oh, okay. Well, I was researching yesterday, so maybe you want to clarify that then for us. Because I was researching yesterday and my understanding was there was less time allotted to deal with private members' bill than if it was a government bill.
Well, I've always understood, and you could be right, as far as I understand, each member is allowed the opening speech to be, I believe, an hour debate. And then each following member can debate up to, or speak for 20 minutes.
Okay.
I don't see it going that long. Most people by now would have made up their mind. Remember, we had a significant debate in 2013. So I don't see much of a large time period being allocated, other than asking people where they stand as far as whether they vote.
Sure. So in terms of time then, have you any idea when this will be debated?
It should be debated July 8th, 2017. Because the last time was July 8th, 2016.
Okay.
And because it failed in the Senate, you have to wait 12 months before you can, and the word is, pass the bill again.
Yeah, because that's an important issue, isn't it?
Right.
Pass the bill, because it can't be turned down by the Senate, can it, this time?
It cannot. And the reason why I laid it, because the Constitution doesn't say you can lay it. I could have laid it probably last year. But you can't pass it until the 12 months is up. And so we'll go to the 8th and debate it that day.
So why are you doing it? I mean, you've probably seen the interview I did with Robert Sterling and Mark Pettingill on Burr News. And one of the things that Mark Pettingill made the point of saying is that it's on a road to a flogging if it comes back to the House. Those are his exact quotes, meaning which he doesn't think there'll be a support.
Well,
so
I think,
first of all, why are you doing this?
Oh, first of all, we have to understand that the intent of Parliament in 2013 was not to have same-sex marriage. That was clear. So we have to get it back to where the intent of Parliament was before the actual passing in 2013 towards an common. At that time, Mark brought the bill to Parliament. He was the Attorney General. Wayne Scott was the minister in charge. And if you allow me to quote what Wayne Scott said at the time, he said, there has been much talk and speculation throughout the community that the additional offer protection against discrimination based on sexual orientation is a slippery slope. That's what people are saying. If we move that direction, it's a slippery slope, which will eventually lead to same-sex marriage. This is his quote. I wish to state empathetically that the change to the act being debated today have nothing to do with same-sex marriage. Well, guess what? It did.
This, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but this was regarding civil unions?
This was the towards the common that where the judge has ruled on the part in the Human Rights Act where it talked about services. That's the part that was
okay, right, yeah.
Matter of fact, Mark Pettingill said that at the time. He said, in my view, because I laid a similar amendment in 2013, recognizing that the possibility of, because the Constitution sits up here, then the Human Rights Act, and then all the bills falls on that. Now we're making an adjustment to the Human Rights Act, which we felt would have an impact, which will allow same-sex people of the same sex to get married. That's what took place. But we tried to make an amendment to say that no, despite what the Human Rights Act says, we want to ensure that marriage is still defined between a male and a female. So Mark said at the time, in my view, it is not a valid fear or concern that someone can take the very significant thing that we are doing here today, that was 2013, and sensibly in lower runoff and try and apply at the registry to have same-sex marriage. I mean, that's powerful words.
So
Okay, hold on. Because the first thing that's going to happen is that those provisions are going to be looked at, and the answer on the face of it would have to be no. It would have to be no because the law is in place.
Understood. So is this the basis of why you're reintroducing your amendments to the Human Rights Act?
Well, another real reason is because there are people in my constituents and people throughout Bermuda said we don't think that this should be the end of the end, but the beginning of the end. I had no problem of Mark, and Mark's a friend of mine, to bring a case before the judiciary and fight it in the Supreme Court. I have no problem with that. Although I do disagree, and to a certain extent, because the intent of Parliament, and he knew what the intent was, and every member knew what the intent was when they passed it. But he did it. He brought it towards the Supreme Court. But that's not the end. If he had lost in the Supreme Court, it would have only meant that he would have then taken to the Court of Appeal. That's what he would have done. So if that's the case, then why should everyone else say, okay, well, this is the end. Let's go home, pack our big stuff and go home. No, the system, we have a system in there. It's the Court of Appeal and the Privy Council, and then it's the legislature. The legislature has now spoken because they felt, they did, in 2016 they spoke. 20 to 10, by the way. 20 to 10. It was the...
I want to come on to that.
Okay.
You mentioned there are two things. You mentioned your constituents have talked to you about it. How much of this is being driven by your constituents? Because, again, it's a quote from Mr Pedigle. He said he probably feels the pressure more from his constituency with regard this to anybody else.
I think everyone. I mean, the referendum should...
Well, it was a non-referendum, but anyway.
Non-binding. Well, what does that mean? That means human being has
But it didn't reach 50% to be...
That's because some human being said, the human being, which is the Premier, said that unless you reach 50, it's non-binding. And sorry,
the rules
even if it had reached...
it wasn't say, he didn't say 50%, it had to be 50% for it to be meaningful, to be counted.
But even if it had, it was non-binding, he said.
Yeah,
so
but 50%, that's wrong, because 50% to be meaningful.
Okay.
To be recognised.
But 47% showed up, which is higher than the normal percentage of turnout for general election. General election somewhere between, let's say, 75 to 80. Let's use the word 80, which was very high for normal turnout in general election. 47% is much higher than general election, or the 50%. If you want to use that scenario, some of those people have moved to England. Some are off the island. Some are in school. There's a bunch of reasons why some certain people wasn't able to reach 50%. And then again, the other reason why, because people felt it was non-binding, and why should I care? But
more than 50% obviously didn't care. Or that's
well, yeah, but I hear what you're saying. But my point is this: the majority in every constituency, not only Wayne Furbert's constituents, but from St George's to Somerset, even in the safe OBA seats, said that we believe that marriage should be kept between a male and a female. So I've heard from all aspects, and the referendum, although it was non-binding, spoke volume.
So you genuinely think it's not just your constituents, but there's enough support for you in this island for you to bring this legislation, which will stop sex.
That's right. And if the OBA government doesn't believe it, have another referendum which is binding. Bring the real and say, look, this is going to be binding. We want to try one more time. We spent about $400,000. I'm not sure what the price tag was. But I think the budget was about $400,000 for a referendum that's non-binding, it became nonsense.
Now, you mentioned that there was a significant vote in favour of your original amendment in the House. What are your soundings amongst MPs this time around? You've presumably taken soundings, you've presumably spoken to your colleagues in the House.
There are those who believe that it should be left alone. Yeah.
As it is now?
Yeah, in other words, I mean, don't bring up this again, leave it alone, let's go sleep, and no, you can't. You're representing the people. You can't be saying, I'm going to represent the people and abrogate your responsibility. People, that's not, as I said, Mark would have gone to the Court of Appeal, he went to the Privy Council. So why can't legislators who are saying, we represent you, we every 4 or 5 years, whatever the numbers, or even sooner, says, I'm going to represent you in Parliament. I'm going to represent you. They're washing their hand and hoping it will just die. No, let the system work as well. At the end of the day, if the system works and if Parliament goes in July and votes against my bill, I have no other place to go.
But what soundings do you take? Just repeat the question. You presumably talk to your colleagues. You say some of them want you to leave it alone.
Not my colleagues.
Well, I meant parliamentary colleagues or MPs in the House.
Yes.
What feedback are you getting? Do you think there's going to be enough support this time?
I think there's a chance for it once again to pass. That's a wide spread, 20-10.
Yeah.
And the other three who were not in the House, first of all, the Premier abstained. I'll assume he will vote against it because last time he didn't vote at all. Zane de Silva was off island, and Neville Tyrrell was not in Parliament. All right. So, if I had to work it out, I think that they will. I don't know where they will support right now, but I think that there is a lot of room to play with. I don't believe Wayne Scott's going to change his mind. I don't believe that my quote person, Sylvia Richard, will change his mind. These were two individuals that fought hard. In 2013, the former Premier Kennedy, said that he promised this country that this will not take place. How can you walk away from your conscience 2 years, 3 years later? 1 year later.
But more than likely, in an general election year this year, the consensus seems to be that it's going to be this year. Doesn't this place everybody, all the MPs, in a very difficult position?
It does. It places them in a very tough position.
Because they're on the risk of pleasing some of their constituents, but displeasing a significant number of others.
I would suggest looking at the referendum, I would have thought they knew what side they should be on.
Doesn't that complicate things for you?
Not for me.
You don't mind putting them in that position?
No, I don't.
Is that because you feel so strongly about it personally?
I brought it back last year when we didn't have when we did not have a referendum. Like I said, you cannot walk away from people when they've asked you to represent them.
Their argument will be they're not necessarily representing the majority.
That I'm not?
They're the other MPs because of the referendum.
Well, let's suppose the people showed up was much more higher than 67% said no compared to people that showed up. Even if you had given the yes 5% more, it still would have beat the no's. Give them 10% more.
But some of those in marginal seats are going to be quite worried about this, aren't they?
I would have thought so. It's part of our social and cultural part of us for years. We're Bermudas, we're conservative by nature, and those who wants to step out on their own and believe that they were. And that's their right. That's their right. But the people have spoken, and if they want to take a chance, it's up to them. I don't knock them at all. There are safe seats, right, which I don't think will change at all. In other words, Grant Gibbons voted against my motion. If Grant votes out against it, I don't think it's going to have an impact on him in Paget. Not going to work.
You in the last few weeks, you've put on a couple of posts on your own Facebook page, which seem to have indicated that you're very well. Which actually said, I think I might be misquoting you slightly, but basically it said, "I have to go it alone. I am prepared to go this alone." Talking about same-sex marriage, you've got the distinct impression that you don't have the backing of the PLP.
No. Well, let's put it this way: I have the backing of the PLP to have a conscious vote.
But you have the backing of the PLP over this issue.
I have the backing of the PLP. The party has always agreed to a conscious vote on this issue. What I mean by I'll go learn, because it's a private members bill. It's not a party bill. And so that's where I stand. And at the end of the day, listen, in 2013, when the bill passed by Mark and Wing at the time, and everybody understood what they were passing, I wouldn't be here back in Parliament.
Do you have the backing of the PLP caucus and the parliamentary group?
Some.
Some.
Mm-hmm.
Did they ask you not to do this?
No, I'm not getting. I'm not going to get into who said who said not. I can tell you some people from the OBA don't think I should be doing it, but I'm not going to mention their name either.
But there was dissent within the PLP about you doing this.
No,
But you didn't get the back.
it's a conscious vote. It's a conscious vote.
Understood. It's a police economy.
So it's a private.
Understood, but it's coming back to my original point. It's going to place a lot of MPs potentially in a difficult position. In a general election, your own party wouldn't want to face that added complication. Which is why it's important to know if your party's backing you.
It's a conscious vote. It's a private member's bill. It's up to them to decide whether they are listening to their constituents. There are certain constituents that spoke volume. Hamilton Parish, in particular, St. George's, and Somerset. There were large margins. You want to go out there and try to be a maverick and say that I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to do or say, by the way, I'm here to represent you. I want to vote for me. Then they say, well, hold on, you didn't represent me when I tell you to represent me. Well, that's a chance you have to take.
We do have this motion of no confidence vote coming up in the next couple of weeks. Of course, if that succeeds, then your private member's bill might not be heard for some time. Will you keep bringing it back?
Oh yeah. I will bring it back until Parliament finally speaks. You're right. If the vote no confidence goes through, or whatever, but if it fails, then I most likely have a chance of bringing it in July. Sorry, but if it doesn't pass, or if it passes, then my chance of bringing it back won't be until November.
Yeah.
Well, to a certain degree, the heat's off there because you're already in Parliament.
So you would get more backing.
Huh?
You're likely to get more support.
It could be less because I'm not heading towards an election. You follow what I'm saying?
Hypothetical at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens further down the line.
Yeah.
No, the UK in July 17th, it became law. July 17th, 2013, the Marriage Same-Sex Couples Bill was passed. Presumably, are you concerned at all that, given the UK stance, that the government might not sign this off?
That's the Parliament has a job to do. The governor has a job to do. We will then, I would have thought, be in a constitutional crisis if he decides not to support what the majority of members of Parliament said. And despite the non-binding referendum, there was a large amount of people that spoke. He had to make a decision on that. And so some may say, well, look, let's bring a constitutional crisis. Let's come to here to England or basically where we stand as a people and where they stand. So it could be an interesting time. I would have done my job at the end of the day. The people would have done their jobs in Parliament if they pass it. And then all eyes are then on the governor. And that's up to him.
Have you had any conversations with the governor?
No, he has his duty. I'm not going to preempt. He's not going. He knows where we stand, and then he will decide what he wants to do.
When I again refer back to the interview I did earlier with Mr. Tri-Stilling and Mr. Pettingill, a quote I've taken out. The reality is this. This is according to Mr. Tri-Stilling. A significant reason why we have same-sex marriage today is because of preserved marriage. The government were under pressure to pass civil union legislation because under the European Convention of Human Rights, they were required to do so if they didn't already have same-sex marriage. So the point he was making was there was such opposition to civil unions, they had to go to the same-sex marriage path. Isn't it just been easy with hindsight to have accepted civil unions?
Well,
They would never have got here.
yeah.
Everybody would have been happy.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not sure he's quite right about that. What the OB lacked was leadership, because if they felt that they had the votes themselves, at that time, Mark was still with them. They had the numbers, and if they felt that they had the numbers, I would have thought they would have brought it. But they recognized they did not have the numbers. It wasn't us. It wasn't preserved marriage. It was them. They had type of consultation type paper that they put before Parliament to have a discussion on it. But as far as the went, they're all over the place on this particular issue, and it shows. It's the government refused to accept the referendum despite the 50%. The non-binding, they refused to bring a bill, whether it was civil unions or whatever, and now they refuse to appeal the findings by the judge. It shows a sign of weakness.
Do you agree, just for a minute, putting aside the issue of same-sex marriage, do you agree that there should be no discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation?
For benefits, yes. Marriage, I think marriage is a more of a religious type setting.
But isn't that the issue? Is that it's more of a religious issue?
In the marriage?
Okay. Yeah, because
Yes.
this doesn't affect the churches.
The marriage.
They can refuse to marry a same-sex couple.
Well, I'm just saying that marriage to me is a much more of a that what we have always known as marriage be defined as a part of a religious perspective, and so I don't believe that it's a right to get married. It's not right for anyone to get married.
But do you believe in rights for other same-sex couples? Sorry,
I believe in benefits, and
that's being
benefits. There has always been the argument. They want certain, but you had to talk about visitation to the hospital or certain bank accounts or blah blah blah, and the list goes on and on. I have no problem arguing for individuals who are in a relationship, whether heterosexual or homosexual, to have a benefits with the partner. I have no problem with that. I just don't support marriage.
Because this is an important issue. Again, it is important to stress that this doesn't force any church to marry a same-sex couple.
True. I hear you. But nor does...
So the church's rights are protected.
Yeah, but nor does the European Convention. European Convention has now recognized that marriage is a right. And I could read, I think it was a case that took place in June of last year, June 2016, reserving marriage by a man and a woman is not discriminatory. This was done in the European Court of, that was published in June. The case was Chapman and Carpenter versus France. So they said it's not discriminatory either. And it says that this means different. In other words, they recognize that because you define marriage that way, it's not discriminatory whether two individuals or same sex should get married. But all it says is that the on the Alari case is that the individual the state should determine its outcome, and that's why out of all the states around the world, I mean, here we are. Here we have a situation for the first time in history. One judge, little Bermuda, one judge is deciding for all of us.
Well, that's because the Human Rights Act gives them the power to do that, and that Human Rights Act was passed by Parliament.
Well, there's a different interpretation of whether they had the right to do it. I'm not a lawyer, but I've heard whether they had the right to do it.
Because from what I understand, certainly from my last interview, is the Human Rights Act gave the courts the power to do this, and gave the courts the power to write the legislation which has to be adopted.
What was the intent of Parliament?
Well,
that's
what
you
tell me.
That's the intent of Parliament that was not supposed to be taking place. That's the issue. Parliament, which is supreme, the court of sovereigns, despite we answer to the Constitution, and we're supposed to do the.
It's not sovereign in this case, but anyway.
I'm not sure whether that's the case. Look at the McDonald issue way back then, when they went to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal said, no, that's what Parliament said, that it shouldn't take place. They're supreme, and so that was a McDonald's. But what more in this case?
Well, coming back though to the point I made, it doesn't stop churches saying no. If that's
no, what?
No, we're not going to marry a same-sex couple.
And so
it protects their rights still. Their rights are still protected, I should say.
Yeah, well, I hear. Well, that's the church. How about individuals? How about the registrar? individuals who are
for a civil union.
No, getting married. You're talking marriage. Right?
Yeah.
So in the case where one goes to the registrar to get married, and I understand one of them is supposed to get married probably tomorrow, all right, that's why I understand the rumors going around, then a person of a religious belief, if I'm the registrar, am I forced to do this? I would have thought so, based on their argument. But I'm saying...
Well, legally.
Huh?
Legally now, yes.
Legally, but the intent of government at the time, Parliament, was not to do that. I keep on going back, what was the intent was it? We can't avoid that. If the intent of Parliament was to have that, there's no argument with me. When Stubbs' bill was passed, way back then, I fought against Stubbs' bill. It passed. I live with the Parliament Supreme. So Parliament supported the idea, we moved forward with it. The Senate supported it, we moved forward with it. But you can't have an argument that this should take place when every individual, here we had the Minister of Works at the time, Wayne Scott, the Premier has said that he did not support same-sex. The Deputy Premier, that was Bob Richards, said he didn't support same-sex marriage. Sylvia Richards said it. Leah Scott said she didn't support it. And the whole list goes on and on. My point is that we were hoodwinked in 2013 by my good friend to believe that what we were passing would now take place. So Parliament sit down and say, well, hold on. We made a decision, we passed some legislation, but that's not what we plan to do. Wayne's bill is right. We want to go back to what we originally said, that marriage should be defined between male and female. That's all I'm asking.
You mentioned that there's rumours going around that a couple's getting married tomorrow. Suppose they are, and your amendment passes in the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
The point that was being made by the lawyers I spoke to is that they've got a right to marry now. If your bill passes, they've got no right to get divorced. That leaves them in limbo.
I can't speak to that. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know how that works.
You can no sympathies with that? Have you told them not to get married and wait?
No. The government tomorrow decides to give someone the right to build a waterfront and later on takes the contract from them. Parliament Supreme.
I was at the demonstration last week, and there's a quote that I wanted to talk to read. This is from the Preserve Marriage. We are not to be bullied into silence, and we want to encourage Bermuda to stand for marriage. So they've been hit with hate speech and biased reporting. Now, the same-sex marriage supporters, would they say exactly the same thing, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have never spoke ill of anyone.
Not you personally.
Yeah,
generally.
It happens. Unfortunately, it happens. I saw something posted on Facebook, which I thought was distasteful, very distasteful. But unfortunately, you can't control everyone. And the insults that I've had personally, I know everybody. I've got some friends within that community who doesn't like that. I asked a certain individual coming up to the demonstration. I said, "Hey, good morning. How you doing?" My typical Bermudian way. And they use every language which I can't find in the Bible. And then I'm not going to name the person because sworn to me no name, but he apologized later on. I think he realized that what he said was wrong. I have never gone after anybody because of their...
I'm not asking, not to say you personally have, but there is... It does seem, standing on the sidelines of this, has become an extremely divisive issue.
Yeah, very much so, on both sides. And how do we put it? I think, how do we get there? How do we get back in shape? Doesn't take some healing from on both sides. Both one side saying one thing, one side saying the other. I don't think the preserved marriage has any set in derogatory terms at all. But individuals that either support preserved marriage or individuals who feel that the act or the actions taken by people of same sex should not take place. And unfortunately, we've got to become more mature. I think the discussion or what we took place up on the Hill, despite they had a very small group up there, it was civil. I mean, they had the right to shout over us, and then people on board had the right to shout over them, and at least there was no real, everybody left peacefully. It was no big problem, and that's where we should be. We will never find on any issues of significant, whether whether it's same-sex marriage, whether it's gaming, casinos, whether it's, or any other conscience about hanging, right? You'll find people on different views, and that's unfortunate, or part of the things we find in politics.
Would you ask now that people just tone it down a bit?
Oh, I would love to, but and I've told some people, but who might say? I mean, I heard.
Well, you're the figurehead for this. You've become the figurehead for this, so it would be for you to say.
I'm not sure I'm the figurehead. I'm just a humble servant. But Kevin Dollars from the tourism department came after me. Now, the question is, he's. I mean, they say that the tourism department is independent.
Well, I can't answer for Kevin Dallas, and he's not here to
Well,
answer
I'll tell you what he said. I can tell you what he said. He said, told the Bermuda people and the visitors to write me and tell me that I'm wrong.
I feel uncomfortable doing this because Kevin Dallas isn't here to answer for himself.
It's on Facebook.
It's
on Facebook.
But maybe he'll want to respond to that later.
Yeah, I welcome him because I said to him, I said, you're trying to cross the line. You're supposed to be an independent body, right? You're coming up.
Well, I think it comes back to emotions are running high.
Yeah.
But again, would you go back to the point? You are the figurehead for this. You have become the figurehead for it because of your actions. Would you tell people to turn it down?
I've said it, but I can say that, but I don't think it's going to take place because both sides are heated, and we get closer to July 8th when the debate will take place. We'll boil back up again. And name callings, everything that you can think of under the sun will be, it reminds me of that saying when I was young, sticks and stones may break your bones, but names and everything. I'm tough enough to take name calling, but some people are not. And unfortunately, I wish we could find a way to turn it down, but it's not. I don't think it's going to happen. Some people on Facebook, as with fictitious names. You never know if some people are real or not. And I'm hoping that at the end of the day we'll find a way that whoever. I mean, when the case was won, I came outside and hugged someone up. Hey, congratulations, guys. But then I go, well, okay, you won the first round. Maybe it's time now to go to the Premier League. Let's go fight again.
Well, we'll find out when your amendment is read.
Yeah, I look forward to it for the debate.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest.
And I believe at the end of the day it will pass.
Okay. On that note, Mr. Furbert, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeremy.